Hey everybody, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our upcoming workshop and then share some interesting statistics with you. So the largest fitness organization in the world actually recently did a poll, and guess what the number one area that people thought they needed improvement on, or their number one goal was to improve upon. In fact, it was 76% of the population polled their midsection. So if you want to take as much as 2 to 4 inches off your waistline, you are going to want to be at this workshop. Now, when it comes to midsection training, the average person, in fact, you could go to any gym in the world and we could walk around together and I would show you dozens and dozens of people being grossly inefficient at best, and at worst, doing things that were potentially injurious. That's right, they are actually doing things that will actually eventually precipitate into injury. Why? Because they're exercising incorrectly with poor biomechanics, and secondly, they are doing exercises that are inappropriate for their level. And one of the biggest reasons is most people never learn how to exercise from a standpoint of science. So they never ever really focus on the fundamentals. They never ever build a strong foundation. And one of the things I always like to use in terms of an analogy, if you were building your dream home, just think about this, you're building your dream home, everything you want in your home, and you build it on a horrible foundation. Would that make any sense? No. So we think about building a beautiful body. We can look really good and not perform very well because we never took the time to build our foundation. So at the workshop, we are going to focus on teaching you how to build a good, strong foundation. Another thing is 80% of all Americans will suffer low back pain at some point in their life. It doesn't matter if you're talking about chronic low back pain or intermittent bouts of low back pain. 80%, that's a big number. And the reason is people are sitting too much. Again, they're exercising incorrectly. They're not exercising enough. The back is, from a mechanical standpoint, it is just an area that can really, really get beat up. Again, looking at poor biomechanics in the gym, we're obviously, because people are sitting so much in front of technology, we're sitting in long static postures for way longer than the back is designed to actually sit, particularly if we don't have that good sound foundation built. So back pain is a real problem that a lot of people will deal with. Now, I will just tell you this, I have actually been fortunate enough to rehabilitate hundreds of low back, and when people come to me, even many of the professional athletes, the high level collegiate athletes that I've worked with, even people at that level, not only do they have a poorly conditioned deep abdominal wall, or their deep abdominal wall just is not turning on, most of those people have faulty respiratory mechanics, meaning they are not breathing optimally. Now, your diaphragm is your primary respiratory muscle, but it is also a secondary spinal stabilizer. So if you are not breathing properly, you are also vulnerable to low back problems. We're going to teach you how to breathe properly and why people today are not breathing properly, so you can share this with friends and family. Now, another statistic is 48% of all women postpartum over the age of 40 suffer with some level of urinary incontinence. So what does that mean? That means if they run, they jump, they laugh, they cough, they sneeze, they dribble. And so one of the things is when we take a look at a weak pelvic floor, if you don't have the development of that pelvic floor musculature, you are very vulnerable to urinary incontinence. Now, that is a pain in the butt that a lot of people really struggle with. But another thing too is your pelvic floor is also a major stabilizer of your SI joint. So it's also very important for low back health. And another thing too is if we take a look at where the pelvic floor is, right up here is our deep abdominal wall. So if you have weakness in the pelvic floor, you're going to have weakness in the deep abdominal wall. If you have weakness in the deep abdominal wall, you're going to have weakness in the pelvic floor. Why not fix both of them at the same workshop? So here's another thing too. When we take a look at any symptom, so let's just say you have an inability to flatten your stomach. That is the symptom, right? So is there a structural component involved? Yes, of course, because certain muscles have become too weak. Well, when we take a look, and this is one of the things we're going to evaluate at the workshop, is we're going to look at your muscles that are weakened, and then we're going to look at the muscles that are too tight. And sometimes muscles that are too tight can then weaken other muscles. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we customize your approach. So it's not going to be a cookie cutter program. It's going to be customized for you as an individual. So we are going to look at all the muscles. But here's where the workshop, this is where we really are going to differentiate ourselves with other core workshops, is we are going to look for all of the elements. We are going to test for all the other elements that would stress out your nervous system and not allow those deep abdominal wall muscles to contract or fire properly. So we are going to look at, do you have any type of food intolerances, immune challenges, things like bacteria, viruses, parasites, funguses. All that can create disruption with your core muscles. Chemicals, heavy metals. So even your dental work, yes, your dental work can create inhibition of your deep abdominal wall. It can also affect your pelvic floor, and you're going to learn all about that at the workshop. Emotional stress. Emotional stress is a big one. It can create a number of issues, not only with low back pain, but also with the gut. So we're going to take a look at that. And then the real big one for a lot of people is scars. Scars create probably more issues than any of these other variables. And if you have a cesarean scar, or you have an episiotomy scar, you have a hysterectomy scar, all that is going to create electrical disruption, which is basically going to shut these muscles down. So think of it this way. If a nerve pathway, I'm sending the signal to this muscle to contract, and you think of this nerve pathway like a hose, and we kink the hose, what's going to happen? Are we going to have an increase? Or are we going to have a decrease in flow? Well, if the hose is kinked, of course, we're going to have a decrease in flow. If you have a decrease in nerve flow to this muscle, do you think it's going to get stronger or weaker? Right, it's going to get weaker. So here's all the variables that can kink the hose. So what we want to do is we want to unkink the hose by taking these stressors off your nervous system. So we are going to test everything. Again, this is a customized approach. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. For guys, it can be a belly button scar. It can be a circumcision scar. Anything within this neurological reflexive field can inhibit these abdominal wall muscles, which can not only lead to you not being able to flatten your stomach, but also low back and some level of pelvic floor dysfunction. Now, another thing we're going to do at the workshop is we are going to be doing Hugo treatments. So we are going to be using pulsed electromagnetic frequency field therapy training. And what we're going to do is anytime there's a damage or you have a sick cell, what happens is that cell loses its electrical charges. So if you think of a healthy cell like a grape and an unhealthy cell like a raisin, what happens is the cellular membrane collapses when the cell loses its electrical charge. Well, then when that happens, you're not going to get good nutrition into the cell. The waste product is not going to be able to exit the cell will not be able to heal. So what we're going to do is we're going to put everybody on the Hugo, electrically charge those damaged cells. So we have so much at this workshop. It's going to be a phenomenal event. It's something that really everyone needs. Why? Because all human movement emanates from the core, and if you have a weak core, the rest of your body is not going to be optimized. So if you have any questions, feel free to call our front desk. If you want to get signed up, we're going to have a link, as well as you can call our front desk and get signed up there. This is definitely a workshop you're not going to want to miss. It doesn't matter if you're a guy, if you're a female, you need to be at the workshop. And just to kind of give you some additional information, if you're a guy watching this, a lot of times after the age of 50, what happens is for a male is testosterone drops. Well, when your testosterone drops, that thins the lining of the pelvic floor. It weakens the pelvic floor, so it leaves you more vulnerable to low back problems as well. Another thing too with guys is they can have BPH, which is benign prostate hypertrophy. So the prostate hypertrophies, and what happens, so it enlarges, and when that happens, that also can shut down the pelvic floor. So that benign prostate hypertrophy can be a real issue with low back problems that never ever get resolved because it's a hidden challenge that a lot of practitioners do not look at. So we're going to look at all of these things. Again, ton of information you guys are going to get. We're going to get a lot of time to spend on the floor doing the exercises and the stretches so everybody can get the results they're looking for. Look forward to seeing you at the workshop.